what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled "What Happens After an Airline Shuts Down?" One of my biggest fears, because I'm a big fan, I can't lie, of these cheap airlines sometimes. Well, there's one that I really dislike, which is Ryanair. Just recently I don't trust them. I don't trust them, and every time I fly with Ryanair, the turbulence is crazy. But, you know, usually when I buy flights, which, by the way, I'm going to Finland for 2 days, suddenly this Monday and Tuesday, that's coming up, I buy the cheapest that I can find. And usually the airlines are somewhat questionable, and I also always think about the fact that what if something happens and they just shut down, and then, you know, but we'll see what this is about, so yeah.
In the early hours of May 2nd, 2026, Spirit Airlines told its passengers not to come to the airport. Every flight canceled, every counter closed. 17,000 employees found out they were losing their jobs with almost no notice in the middle of the night.
What? Just like that? That's crazy.
And 91 planes were left sitting at 26 airports across the country with nowhere to go. Shutting down an airline isn't like closing a restaurant. You can't just lock the doors and walk away. There are planes that need to physically move, passengers with tickets to flights that no longer exist, gates and landing slots that other airlines are already circling, and 17,000 people who woke up employed and went to bed without a job. First thing that hits is the passengers, and it's messy. Spirit said they'd automatically refund anyone who paid with a credit or debit card. And for most people, that actually happened pretty fast. The airline said the majority of those refunds were processed by Saturday evening, the same day they shut down. But not everyone paid with a card. If you booked through a travel agent, you had to contact them directly. If you used a voucher or Spirit loyalty points, those were just frozen. The airline said compensation for those would be determined at a later date through the bankruptcy process.
This is crazy though, like just from one day to another, like at least, I don't know, 2 weeks notice, something.
Which is corporate speak for,
and why?
Or you're probably not getting that money back. Free Spirit points, gone. Not transferable to any other airline, not redeemable anywhere, just gone. Then there were the people who were mid-trip, like they'd flown to their destination on Spirit and now had no flight home. That's when the Department of Transportation stepped in. They coordinated what they called rescue fares across 9 airlines: United, JetBlue, Delta, American, Southwest, Frontier, Allegiant, Avelo, Breeze. Basically every carrier that overlapped with Spirit's routes. United capped fares at $199 for most routes, $299 for longer ones. JetBlue offered $99 one-way fares. Delta and American offered reduced fares on shared routes. Southwest capped prices at their ticket counters for a few days. But those deals were temporary, a few days, maybe a week. And the people who didn't hear about them in time, or couldn't afford even the discounted fares, were stuck figuring it out on their own. Hertz offered one-way car rental deals so people could drive instead. But some travelers faced choices like driving 10 hours from Atlanta to Miami rather than paying $600 for a last-minute replacement flight. That's the reality of an airline shutting down with almost no warning. Which brings us to the planes that...
No, imagine you're like backpack traveling and you took a Spirit Airlines flight to like Madagascar and then you're just there. What do you do? Like, what do you actually do? That's crazy.
Themselves. 91 aircraft scattered across 26 airports, and that's just the ones that were still moving around the network. Spirit had about 170 aircraft total, but around 40 were already parked at storage facilities in Arizona as part of earlier downsizing. So the 91 are the ones that got caught mid-operation when the lights went off. But Spirit didn't actually own most of those planes. Many airlines, including Spirit, lease a large portion of their fleet rather than owning the aircraft outright. In Spirit's case, all but about 48 of their 170 planes were managed by leasing companies: AirCap, Avalon, Air Lease Corporation, and others. The second Spirit stopped operating, those lessors wanted their planes back, immediately. Problem is, getting them back is, kind of a logistical nightmare. These planes are parked at gates, on taxiways, wherever they happen to be when the shutdown hit. Airport authorities don't want to touch them. Nobody on the ground has authorization to move them. It's basically chaos. So the lessors hired a company called Nomadic Aviation Group to go get the planes. Nomadic specializes in this, aircraft repossession. They send qualified pilots to physically fly the planes out. And in this case, they actually hired about 20 former Spirit pilots to do the flying. Some of these guys were showing up to airports in jeans and t-shirts, no airline uniform, trying to convince airport security that yes, they're authorized to get on that plane and fly it away. One Nomadic executive described the whole process as mass confusion. You walk up to a person of authority and say, "I need to get on that airplane, I'm repossessing it." And the first thing they say is no. The planes are being ferried to desert storage
Free planes, everybody.
facilities in Arizona, Phoenix Goodyear Airport, and Pinal Air Park mostly. The dry climate is ideal for storing aircraft long-term because there's less risk of corrosion. From there, the lessors decide what happens next. Some of these planes will get repainted, reconfigured, and leased to another airline within months. Some will be parted out, engines, landing gear, avionics, and the components sold separately. On some of these planes, the engines alone are worth more than the airframe. We actually did a whole video on how this leasing system works. Worth checking out after this one if you're curious.
I never knew that you can lease planes.
But the short version
Makes
is,
sense,
when
though.
an airline dies, the physical aircraft don't die with it. They just get recycled into someone else's fleet. Okay, so passengers get refunded, planes get repossessed. But there's a bigger question lurking underneath all of this, one that affects people who never even flew Spirit. What happens to the price of your ticket on every other airline? CBS ran an analysis using aviation data from Cirium, and they found that when Spirit exited a route, average fares on that route jumped about 23%. That's roughly $60 more for a round-trip ticket. And passenger volume on those routes dropped about 20%. Fewer people flying, paying more to do it. Because Spirit wasn't a small player. At Fort Lauderdale, their biggest hub, Spirit had been carrying over 28% of all passengers the year before the shutdown, more than any other airline at that airport.
But why did it shut down though?
JetBlue announced 11 new routes out of Fort Lauderdale within days of the shutdown. They saw the gap and moved in immediately. American and United both started looking at adding bigger planes or more flights on routes where they overlapped with Spirit. But for some routes, especially smaller cities where Spirit was the only ultra-low-cost option, nobody's rushing in. Those cities might just lose their cheapest air service entirely. And the people who flew Spirit because it was the only airline they could afford are getting priced out. That's actually the thing about
This sad music in the background is making me emotional about this airline right here, okay?
ultra-low-cost carriers going away. They don't just carry passengers, they keep fares down on every airline that competes with them. When Spirit was selling a route for $89, Delta and American had to keep their prices close to that. Now that pricing pressure is gone, and the remaining airlines don't have a lot of incentive to keep fares low anymore. And then there are the 17,000 people. Spirit employed about 14,000 directly, plus another 3,000 or so contractors and support workers. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, gate agents, ramp workers, corporate staff. They were notified overnight, which had the effect of making sure the last planes in the air could land safely and crews could be accounted for before the news reached most passengers.
I wonder how they recruit ramp workers, like the ones that throw the luggage in the plane, like who throws it faster, who throws it the most aggressive, hired.
Pilots are among the best positioned out of all of them. There's still strong demand for pilots with mainline jet experience in the US, and Spirit's entire fleet was Airbus A320 family, one of the most common aircraft types in the world. American, Delta, United, JetBlue, many of the majors quickly offered preferential interviews and fast-tracked applications from Spirit pilots. American even set up dedicated recruiting events. Flight attendants are a different story. The hiring process is typically slower and more competitive. Mechanics and ground crew are somewhere in between. Experienced aviation mechanics are always in demand, but the jobs might not be in the same city. And corporate staff, the headquarters employees in Dania Beach, Florida, they're the ones with the hardest road. Those jobs don't transfer easily to another airline. And there aren't many airlines hiring entire corporate departments at once. Spirit isn't the first airline to disappear like this. Won't be the last either. Pan Am shut down in 1991, Eastern Airlines the same year. 2WA got absorbed by American in 2001. Over in Europe, Monarch Airlines collapsed in 2017. Thomas Cook's airline went under in 2019. The pattern is pretty consistent every time. An airline gets squeezed by rising costs, takes on debt to survive, runs out of cash, and either gets bought or liquidated. Spirit's version of this had, a few extra layers, and the airline was already in deep financial trouble long before the final blow landed. Pratt & Whitney engine problems had grounded dozens of their planes for months. The airline got compensation, but it wasn't enough. Then the JetBlue merger got blocked by the Biden Department of Justice on antitrust grounds in early 2024. Spirit hadn't been profitable since before the pandemic, and the losses kept mounting. $2.76 billion just in 2025. They filed for bankruptcy twice, once in late 2024, again in August 2025. And then the Iran conflict hit in early 2026, and jet fuel prices roughly doubled. Spirit just burned through whatever cash it had left. By then, the airline was banking on a government bailout as its last realistic path to survival. The Trump administration was in advanced discussions for a $500 million rescue package. It fell through, and Spirit was done. And the broader pattern underneath Spirit's collapse is something we keep seeing in the industry. Spirit's version of the ultra-low-cost model was getting squeezed from both sides. Legacy carriers launched basic economy to steal the budget traveler, and costs, fuel, labor, maintenance, kept climbing while fares stayed rock bottom. The gap between what they charged and what it cost to fly got thinner and thinner. Now, other ultra-low-cost carriers are still flying. Frontier is still operating, Allegiant is still operating. Some of them are even expanding to pick up Spirit's old traffic. But they're all facing the same pressure, and Spirit's collapse is a warning about where that math can end up. When an airline shuts down, it looks like a sudden event. One day they're
Why am I getting emotional over a plane? I've never even flown on Spirit Airlines. I feel bad for the planes.
Flying.
For the workers, obviously. I'm just kidding, but it's sad.
The next day they're not. But underneath, it's more like a disassembly.
And imagine the one who made Spirit Airlines, how deflating that must feel to be able to make such a huge company and it's working, and then this happens.
The planes get repossessed and fly again for someone else. The routes get carved up by competitors. The gates get reassigned. The pilots get hired across town. Every piece of the airline gets absorbed by the rest of the industry. Airlines don't really die, they just get taken apart. And the ones who pay the price are the employees who lose their seniority, the communities that lose their cheapest flights, and the passengers who happen to be in the middle of it when it all came down.
Who would have thought? Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Who would have thought that I would get emotional over a plane? But that was an interesting video, honestly. These are things that I never think about in my day-to-day, if I don't watch a video on it. So thank you guys for joining me for this one. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've flown on Spirit Airlines. What's your favorite airline? What's your least favorite? My least favorite is Ryanair. I'm sorry, I'm biased. I don't like you. Okay, I might be flying Ryanair this Monday. I haven't even checked because I bought the tickets so quickly. But yeah, thank you for joining me. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video.